It works in exploring physiological data in smartwatches for workload management. So here you have some of the main ideas of the talk. First of all, I will be talking about the work-related stress and workload monitoring. Then I want to try to introduce you some issues related to heart rate and heart rate variability, and how you can measure that using some low-cost wearable devices. Then we were designing some watch faces for workload management, and we will carry out a study with young adults in order to check some of the results on the feasibility of this technology for workload management. Then I will be talking to you about the conclusions of future work. So, okay, let me try to introduce certain things related with the work-related stress, which has been basically studied and discovered as one of the principal factors associated with mental disorders. So, as you can see, the economic cost of the work-related stress is about 190 billion, and some of the factors that are related with the work-related stress are the time pressures, the lack of control, the sexual harassment, and the lead support from colleagues and supervisors from the work. So, as a result of that, thinking workload monitoring in workplaces might decrease the likelihood to develop multiple health problems and multiple mental disorders, such as chronic stress, anxiety disorders, or mental fatigue, as well as anger and different mood states. For instance, so we have the stress and workload levels can be accurately measured through EEG or electroencephalographic signals. So, but for sure, less intrusive technologies should be designed for this, let's say, real-time processing. So, I think just be wary this technology should produce more stress in people, and that's why, although EEG is a really interesting technology to be measuring and to be monitoring workload, so less intrusive technology should be like try to make an evolution for these kind of applications. As you can see here, this is like a device, a wearable device, marked quotations, and they say that it's ideal for use outside of the lab. So I cannot imagine how you can use this in a car, like driving all days. So. As a consequence of that, novel approaches in mental workload monitoring include the use of information communication technologies in order to facilitate this process. So this will know that around 80% of consumers said that there's an important benefit that they saw in the use of the wearable technology for healthcare. So considering that is, let's say, a particular interest in work with these physiological sensors in wearable devices in order to facilitate the integration of all of these workload monitoring processes. So, some of the devices that you can find online in the market include, but they are not limited to the Microsoft band, which are equipped with a lot of physiological sensors, has the heart rate monitor, the EDA or electrodermal activity sensor as well. And you can be in a portable way be monitoring these variables in order to produce more interesting devices to carry with you all days. So. The second one is a sensor called an angel sensor, which is pretty interesting because it's made for researchers. You can actually access the data in an open way, and you can actually get the sensor for a really cheap cost. It's around 100 euros. And of course, we have like more, let's say, robust solutions from the MIT, which is called Empatica, which is coming with these different physiological sensors such as heart rate and skin conductivity and skin temperature, but the price is pretty expensive to be be a wearable. So, as one of the, let's say, more interesting signals that you can record from these wearable sensors is the PPG or photoplethysmography signal, which is more related with how these devices are able to record the heart rate, or how these wearables are using this signal to compute the heart rate. So you can basically work with this non-intrusive physiological signal and make it then less expensive and intrusive than the gold standard for the heart rate, which is ECG, which basically is like requires that you attach a lot of different connectors or electrodes to your chest in order to be reading or recording this heart rate data. You can just wear this in your wrist and be sensing this data. And it's basically a simple and non-invasive optical technique, and it's based on detection of load of fluid volume changes. So using these sensors, basically we can compute a really interesting physiological variable, which is not like singular, it's actually a set of different measurements called heart rate variability. And this is a really interesting market for a physiological skill called resilience, which is basically the ability of the nervous system to overcome some stress situations. We have here like the normal ECG is coming with these really different peaks, like the R peak, and then we just struck like the different peaks along the time, and then you can see how actually is varying your beat-to-beat behavior. We have a bunch of variables and parameters that you can use with the heart rate variability in the time domain, such as the standard deviation, the root mean square, and so on. You can as well use some frequency parameters related with the low frequency, high frequency, and some geometric parameters. The interesting stuff is using all of these features, you can basically describe in an accurate way a physiological state of one user along a full day, or even in specific tasks. So we have the healthy heart rate variability, basically is those which have a better physical activity performance, better relaxation, they have as well an enhanced cognitive performance. A good variability in the heart rate can produce a lot of different health benefits. Meanwhile, a low adaptability of a low rate of heart rate variability can produce like easily people that can become easily exhausted and have a lot of different health issues and so on. So, working on taking in workload measures and metrics, we have like let's say different domains that we can explore in order to measure or to effectively measure these workload parameters. We have subjective measurements, just about be asking users about how are they feeling about the workload levels, such as the NASA TLX, which is a really popular questionnaire used for this user experience. Behavioral indicators, which are basically based in observation process. Performance-based measurements, which are basically relating how well are you performing a task, and physiological metrics. Basically, we are here trying to disentangle some of the role of this heart rate variability in workload measurement through these physiological markers. So, heart rate variability basically has been one of the most promising physiological signals and analysis to describe this mental workload during the performance of different tasks. So one of the really interesting metrics which has been widely explored to describe this mental workload is called the SDNN, which is basically the standard deviation of normal RR intervals, which means how well are your heart rate varying along the time. So, just to simplify, higher SDNN values indicates good workload levels, and at the same time is representing an optimal heart rate regulation. You can see this is the BPM or heart rate variability curve from a stressed person. Meanwhile, you have a normal person is like more fluid. Here we have higher SDNN values rather than in the stressed curve. So, for the experiment, we were basically asking two different questions. The first is, how do users engage with heart rate variability feedback administered by these smartwatches? The second one, what is the impact of this interaction in the daily workload of users? So for that, we have three different challenges. The first is try to integrate this heart rate variability analysis inside of the smartwatches using these PPG sensors. So because some of the papers actually pointed out there is certain kind of inaccuracies related with these heart rate measurements from the wearables. The second one is trying to simplify the heart rate variability, because you know that we have a bunch of measurements over there, and the question is how we can integrate that in a way that normal people can easily understand what is happening with their heart. And the third one is try to quantify the impact of this workday interaction with the smartwatch in the workload level from the users. So we starting then developing some watch faces. And considering that I'm not a designer, I'm just going to point out like three very basic rules that I was using to the design of these watch faces. The first is try to consider the watch size. So most of the times people wanted to put a lot of information in these watch faces, which basically will be a mistake because you are basically overloading or overwhelming the information that the user can actually understand. The second one is to try to keep it as simple as possible. So sometimes you want to put a lot of lawyers and a lot of stuff over these things, and the user just want to see the daily over. And the third one is try to use a grid in these kind of designs in order to better distribute your space. So we basically designed it like one watch faces with three, let's say, different presentations. The first is just the control. The second one, we were using the physical activity information from the watch in order to represent in a 5-minute blocks, in order to represent different work pauses. So once one user was taking a pause and a work pause, you will see these blue 5-minute blocks surrounding the watch. And then we were in top of that, we were for the third watch phase, we were using the heart rate variability information in order to represent as well the different levels of workload, which green represents that you are achieving a good workload level, which means that you're good. And the yellow one is like, okay, your workload level is like more or less low and high, and you should stop your activity. So we are as well working with this LG RG watch, which is basically allowing me the recording process of the heart rate in a sampling frequency around 10 hertz. We will, after that, making a resampling at the 1 hertz because we don't need so much data. So we're then filtering the signal and trying to remove some of the outliers related with some of the movements of users and some of the really bad measurements from the heart rate. So the first, considering that our users will be always seated in the work, we didn't expect a lot of increases in the heart rate more than 100 BPMs, and then we were just filtering our data in that range. Then we were trying to identify some outliers working with this pretty simple mathematical rule, where X is basically describing the heart rate measurements, X This is the average of the measurements. This is a C factor, which we're using basically to better filter the signals, and this is the standard deviation. So then we basically extract 5 minutes logs of the heart rate signals and then compute the standard deviation of these differences between the heart rate, which is called in the heart rate variability analysis the SDNN index. And then we were working the physical activity. So we were measuring or using the native application of the Android tool basically measure once users took an active pulse or not. So considering that most of the people actually have different workload levels, we cannot just calibrate the smartwatch for everyone. We just need to calibrate the workload for each person individually. So then we were like working in the calibration process. We were basically using this very well-known task in psychology, which is called the NPAC. Here the idea is to try to increase the workload level of users and try to measure what is happening during that in order to get a trustable signal of high workload levels. So here the task is basically of memory. It's a memory task in which you have to remember a number of elements related with a certain order in which they are appearing. For instance, we have the 2-back task in this time. So these images will appear individually. So you have to remember, in this case, the n number of images that appears before. So in this case, you have to click in the fish, then you have to click if a book appears here, then you have to click if a pencil appears here, and so on. We were using the 2-back task and the 3-back tasks related with. Now you don't have to remember 2 images before, but you have to remember 3 images before, which is more task, which is more mental demanding. And we were recording the heart rate along this interaction. As a second source from the workload, we were using self-reports. During the day, users were like writing down a specific moment in where they were feeling really stressful situations. So at the end, we just compute again the SDNN indexes for these moments, and we just compute an average of the SDNN indexes for these 2 tasks and the indexes from the self-reports. This is really an important stage of this work, because if you don't make a good calibration, the system is not going to be useful for each user, because each user has different responses to stress, specifically different cardiac responses. So we have, for the users, we have main adults. We have adults specifically with no recent heart failures or blood pressure complications. And we implemented an app running in the background in a mobile phone, which is basically trying to send the heart rate information directly to the phone and then to a database in the cloud. In order to facilitate that processing, we were just storing the information related with the SDNN index instead of saving all the heart rate data, which could be, let's say, computationally expensive for the smartwatch. As protocol, we just use these 3 different watch faces in different days. The first, the control condition, which is always just having the daily, which is just having the time. It was assigned for the first day for all users, and then we just switch between the 2 different phases related with the activity tracker and related with the heart rate variability. Users wore the smartwatch from 9 p.m. to around 5 p.m. during 3 different days, and we just applied 3 questionnaires. The first of them is called the subjective mental effort questionnaire, which is basically a scale to 0 to 100, related with what was your workload level along the day. The second one is related with the question of the states of change, which is trying to see the self-perception of users about physical activity and behavior. And we were also checking the impact, which is related with how active are you, if you are vigorous, if you are actually practicing a lot of physical activity, and a custom questionnaire. So I'm going to try to present some of the results. I'm going to try to be short with this presentation. So first of all, we were trying to see which was the coherences between the objective measurements, which means the physiological measurements that we are recording, once compared with the subjective measurements of workload. So for this, first, this is the measured workload, and then you can see the three different conditions. And actually, we found that there is a significant differences between the different workload levels measured by the smartwatch from the 9 users. So here, as you can see, we basically found less workload levels during the heart rate variability, during the use of this heart rate variability watch phase, once compared with the activity tracker, but not compared with the control. So we basically believe that this could be basically a simple, let's say, an order effect related with which watch phase user were using as the first time. So we believe that more prolonged exposure of the heart rate variability has basically this potential to decrease the workload level of users using this technology. And here we have some, let's say, some keywords related with some, let's say, interesting approach of how can people use this technology to develop an ubiquitous biofeedback system. As you probably know, a biofeedback system is a system which basically will allow us to see our physiological signals and to have a better control of them. So why not try to use this kind of technology to provide this feedback of users daily? So this is the workload measured, the workload levels measured by the subjective measurement. And here you can see basically that the results are pretty similar. We have less workload levels using the heart rate variability watch phase once compared with the activity tracker watch phase, but not compared with control. Again, we could see that this is like more or less something, a similar behavior between the two different measurements. So we were as well carrying out some correlations between the two different measurements along the 3 different conditions, and we found interesting but not significant correlations between them. So finally, we as well wanted to know which was the influence of this heart rate variability feedback in a glanceable way on user engagement with the watch face. For that, we were measuring the number of glances, or the number of moments that you were seeing your watch face in this case. And here we have significant differences in the use of the heart rate variability watch face once compared with activity tracker and control as well. So by increasing this number of glances per day, probably we can improve the way in which people are engaging with these wearable signals and these wearable sensors. So, and try to as well improve the way that they are controlling their workload, their daily workload levels. So we have just as well some results from the questionnaires. We have a lot of, let's say, we have a really strong sedentary population in our group, and we found, let's say, something interesting related with these stages of change questionnaire. So we could see that some of the participants were in one stage which is called decision. In the decision, you are basically trying to start doing exercise. So, but once they were interacting with the different watch faces after the control, people were passing from the decision to the action stage, which means that basically the use of this glanceable feedback can help people to become aware on how well are they developing their physical activity along the way, along the day. So, for instance, people were doing certain short breaks, rest on breaks, and they can be more aware about it if they are using this kind of technology, and they can, let's say, easily they can have this triggering the behavior in order to be more active. So, in custom questionnaire, we found as well some significant differences in some of the questions that we were doing along the condition. We found the significant difference between the ability to understand the feedback at a glance once using the heart rate variability watch face, compared with the activity tracker, as well as if they will recommend the use of this watch face. So some of the participants actually report that some of the breaks that they carried out along the day using this heart rate variability were, let's say, consciously produced via seeing this feedback, which is really an interesting result. So here you can see this is the heart rate behavior along the day of one user. This is a user which was in a vigorous group, which means that it's actually doing a lot of exercise along the different days. So you can see here this is the behavior, this is the normalized values of the workload. And here you can see some, let's say, interesting stages along the way. Here we were implementing the end-back tasks, which basically give us this huge peak in the workload on stress levels of users. Here we have the workload threshold, which was computed using this end task and the self-reports. Here was the launch at the launch time. Basically, the user was like again trying to relax before to start working again. And here you have more or less hard work. So you can see these parts of the day, they were like the workload there was pretty high. So, and if you can differentiate between different heart rate variability profiles of users along the day, meanwhile they are interacting with this technology. So, finalize, try to point out some of the limitations of our study, which is basically the exploratory nature of our study. Basically, it's trying to basically establishing certain limitations of how well we can generalize our findings, as well as the sample size, which was very small, and exposure time, which was how well we can adapt to this kind of technology is going to depend on how much time we were using that. So that's why we just think that it was a pretty short period of time. It was just one day interacting with this technology, and probably to improve our physiological self-regulation, we should need more than 1 day of exposition in order to be accustomed to this kind of feedback. So this paper was accepted in the EHAL conference for IEEE, and we will present it for in the next month in Munich. The work is entitled Workload Management Through Glanceable Feedback, the Role of Heart Rate Variability. Yeah, that's it. Questions? Thank you.